Hey everyone, Bree Seeley here, the Entrepreneur Coach, back with another fantastic interview today. Now, Camille and I were introduced by a fellow friend, Annie P. Ruggles, otherwise known as Anniepreneur. Annie was like, girl, you gotta know Camille. So Camille and I went and we had coffee and just had the best conversation. We are both transplants in Tulsa. She came from California and I obviously came from all over. She has a lot of wisdom and insight around business and money and productivity and failure, and how failure, this is interesting, this is what our topic is today, failing actually helped her find her true path. Really interesting perspective, because usually we're taught to avoid failure. So I'm really excited to chat with her today, dive into this topic and really see how we can all embrace failure a little bit more and how we can use failure to actually bring us closer to our big vision. Stay tuned, enjoy the episode, and I will see you at the end. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Coach podcast. I'm the Entrepreneur Coach, Bree Seeley. My mission is to help female entrepreneurs like you have the audacity to believe in the inevitability of your success, then to gather the resources, tools, and knowledge you need to create your most aligned and profitable pathway to your vision of success. This podcast is all about providing you with a nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. Forget the success porn and the rags to riches stories. Each episode will pull back the curtain and share the reality of entrepreneurship. I cannot wait to be part of your journey. Camille Diaz is a coach, financial professional, connector, podcaster, author, and speaker who loves to empower people with knowledge and resources. Her desire is to see others succeed in business and in life, and to help inspired entrepreneurs design a path towards happiness, harmony, and financial security. All right, y'all, please help me welcome Camille to the podcast with a virtual round of applause. Hello, hello.
Hey, thank you so much, Bree, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm excited about the topic and can't wait to get into it, and so grateful to Annie for introducing us, because this is just magic. So yay.
Same. For those of you wondering, Camille is actually going to be speaking at Success Becomes Me in Tulsa in November as well. Make sure that you're visiting successbecomesme.com. Grab your tickets, even if you're not from Tulsa. Last year, we saw women come from 22 different states around the nation. So come join us for the conference. Camille's actually going to be speaking on both Friday, which is the conference, and then Saturday, which is a bonus add-on workshop. If you're vibing with what she's saying, come hang out with us in person in Tulsa. All right, let's dive in. Talking about this idea that failure brought you closer to your path. Can you give us an overview of the story of what that failure was and how it led you closer to your path?
I'll give you my brief history of how I got started and got into things. I'll make sure to include the big giant failure. Trust me, it's going to be obvious. Nobody's going to be able to miss it.
Love it.
So I actually tried to deny my calling and not be a teacher when I was a kid growing up, because there were so many teachers in my family. No, I'm a rebel. I'm going to do something else. When you try to not do the one thing that you're called to do, nothing goes right. Just nothing. But I did end up teaching from pretty early on. I started out in a couple of nonprofit zoos and worked in their education department, summer camps and training volunteers, worked in an after-school program, writing curriculum and managing school sites, like training all 70 or 80 of our staff. Loved it. Moved, like you said, from California to Oklahoma, where I'm at now. Cost of living, if anybody's asking that question in their mind, why would you do that? Ended up opening a ballroom dance studio with a couple of partners. That was my hobby, and I loved it. And I just went from teaching the sciencey stuff I got a degree in to teaching the fun things that I like to do on the side. I thought I was going to be 80 years old and tootling around the dance floor, and it would just be magical. Yeah, that didn't happen because one partner left. A new partner came in, and nothing worked after that. Chemistry was all wrong. Everyone was miserable. Clients hated it. The owners hated it. Nothing worked. So we struggled for maybe another year. I had to call it. I don't want to do this anymore. We closed. We broke our lease. We got sued. We went to court. We had a judgment against us. There was credit card debt in my name and construction debt and all the things. I just imagine me retreating to my room in the dark, wearing sweatpants, binge watching everything, and eating chips out of my hoodie. And I just lived that way for a while until my phone started ringing. People would call and they'd say, hey, I'm so sorry that happened, but would you help me with my dance studio, my vet clinic, my real estate business, all these things, whatever it was, because they saw how my brain worked, they saw how I problem solved, they saw my value at a time that I couldn't find it on my own. Honestly, it took too long. It took 3 to 5 people calling for me to realize this is probably a thing. Maybe I should charge. It wasn't super quick because I was in such a low, but I ended up coaching, declared one day, I think I like this. I'm going to be a coach. The very next morning, I was doing random contracting work stuff with a client, and their client followed me to my car. And it was kind of stalkery. And I was like, why is she so close? Like, I hear her little feet going fast in the parking lot. What is happening? She comes up to me right before I'm going to get in the car because I was trying to run away. And she goes, do you do coaching? And I was like, yes, I do. Did I have any idea what I was going to do? Not really, but I was going to figure it out regardless. That was over 8 years ago, and I absolutely love it. Since then, I have realized that every time I fail, I learn something. When I was doing it really slow in the beginning, I would spend months or sometimes years working on it, and then I'd put it out and nobody bought it, or my friends and family did, but no one else. It wasn't the right product. It wasn't the right thing. It wasn't branded properly, whatever it was, because I wasn't iterating. I wasn't taking the time to test it, to go to the next thing, to try it again, to fail, and move forward. And now I'm to the point where it's like, okay, have an idea for a new thing, show it to a bunch of people, see if it sucks or not. And if it does, next, fix it, change it. If they have suggestions, use them. That's hard to do.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that people hold on to their ideas and keep them secret and don't launch them until they're perfect? That's something I hear a lot from clients.
There's a few things that go on here, but one of the big ones is the fear of rejection, maybe even fear of success, like, oh, it's going to be good and things will blow up and I won't know how to handle it. It could be you had a bad experience before, you showed somebody something a long time ago and they told you it sucked, and so now you're never showing anybody anything again until it's great. We have all this built up in there about that. It's kind of like you have to figure out, how do I be less hard-headed? No, that sounds mean. Egotistical? Wait, that sounds worse. Asshole? No, that's not right. Humble. How do you be humble? How do you humble yourself to accept the feedback and to not see it as every failure of thing that you make does not mean you're a terrible person. It's not connected to your self-worth.
One of the things I see too with a lot of people is that they go to the wrong people asking for feedback as well. I'm sorry, but if your mom is not your ideal customer avatar, if they're not your demographic, you should not be asking them for feedback, period.
Right.
Because if it's not valuable to them, they're going to tell you it's not valuable, period, which is not the truth. The truth is it's not valuable to them because they're not your customer. I think that there's a few layers of things happening in this experience that we're talking about. First of all, people are telling themselves lies based on old information that they've gathered in the past.
Yes.
2, they're asking the wrong people for feedback. 3, they're letting both of those things mean something about them when it doesn't mean anything about them. It's just data.
Right. It's just removing your emotional response to the reaction that you get towards the product. Because whatever it is you made, whether it's a book or a course or a flyer or your brand logo or a phrase that you're using, people are kind enough to let you know what they felt, thought, whatever, what their reaction was to that thing. And if they're willing to give you that information, that's valuable. That's fabulous that they're willing to give you that information. It's removing your reaction to it of, I'm going to let this information trigger some deep garbage that I haven't dealt with yet, and therefore freak out about it and not accept the gift of the feedback that I got from this experiment. You just look at it as an experiment and test it out.
One of my favorite questions that I've been asking clients lately is they'll come to me and say some sort of limiting belief or statement. I will straight up look at them and say, okay, so if that's the lie, what's the truth? Because most of those stories that we tell ourselves are, like I said, based on old information and usually, honestly, based on conjectures or presumptions or things that aren't actually real and tangible. Our mind is just making up stories about what is going to happen or all that stuff.
Yes.
For any listener listening right now, if your brain is telling you lies, spot it, say, oh, that's interesting. That's a lie. If that's a lie, then what's my truth?
For sure. I have done some studying on this, and it's so interesting how so much of our reactions and ideas get programmed when we're young because we have to survive. And in order to survive, you have to adapt to whatever the people around you expect. That's just how it is because you're dependent on those people around you for your survival. They're literally providing your food, your clothes, your home, all of the things. When you get older, it's up to you to update the app. Go download new software. There's an update. Go get one. Recognize, hey, this thing that happened is making me feel this way. That's kind of intense. What is it about that that's really poking my buttons? And see if you can go back and figure out, oh, because I had this happen. I'll give you an example of a time that this happened to me.
Yes, please.
I had somebody who I had recently joined whatever event they were running, and they asked me to teach on something. And this person and I are opposite personalities, which is really cool sometimes because you get a different vibe from someone that's really different from you than someone that's the same. And we're both highly sarcastic. So this works great. I used some big word, and he's like, well, slow down on the big words. We're not going to follow you. Now, the way that I teach is I will use a big word, and then I will explain it. He cut me off right in before I went to go explain what this $2 vocabulary word meant. I kind of snapped. I was kind of snotty back to him. Not rude, I'm not embarrassing level in front of the group, but I wasn't polite about it. I wasn't the way I would usually react. Later, I'm thinking about this, and that's an important thing, is to actually go ponder the stuff later. Like if you do it and keep going and never ask the question about, what was I doing there? You're not ever going to figure it out. It's coming to me later in the evening. What is up with me being so defensive about him calling me out for saying something that was a higher level vocabulary word? I realized it was because when I was a kid, other kids made fun of me for being smart. And since then, I have come to embrace the fact I'm smart and people are just going to have to love it or hate it. But that's the way it is. I'm not going to pretend to be less to make other people comfortable. I'm just going to find a way to elevate them. If they don't get it, I'll explain it. I'll teach it. I'll bring people up. I'm not dropping myself down anymore.
I love that you bring this up. I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I'm a lot into energy and energetics. And someone explained to me once that human beings are always trying to be in harmony with one another. We don't like discord. When we hear discord, we can feel it in our bodies. So when we're discordant with someone, what we try to do is we try to get into harmony. Either that person has to come up and meet us where we are, or we end up dropping ourselves down to where they are because we're just constantly trying to be in harmony with other people. What's interesting is, like you just mentioned, when you can recognize that it's happening, you get to start choosing, oh, I'm not actually going to drop myself down. I'm going to stay up here, and they're welcome to join me up there if they're uncomfortable with the discord. I'm not going to change my vibration or my energetics or who I am in the world or any of that stuff to drop down to meet someone lower, because that's not serving neither me nor them. They're invited to join me up here, or they can stay down there and we can be in this harmony. That's such an important shift. I talk about it a lot with people around family dynamics or parents or good friends that don't understand, people who've gotten into entrepreneurship or things like that. But I love that you bring it up in this context because it can also happen with colleagues. It can happen everywhere, anytime. It can happen with our partners. It can be little things or big things, but that consciousness, do you have any thoughts or tricks around how you maintain that strength within you?
I do. The key, at least for me, is a support structure with other people who are at my level or above it, and they're inviting me to come up to theirs so that I can recognize that I'm not in the wrong here. Are you familiar with the crab bucket metaphor?
Mm-hmm.
You are. You want me to explain it real quick for everybody else, just in case?
And for anyone wondering, I have an episode about this. I think it's from November of 2023, where I talk about both the crab pot and then my other favorite one, which is actually the hermit crab. So we can talk about that one if you want to.
The crab pot idea is if you just put one crab in a pot, eventually it will figure out how to climb out. If you put more than one crab in a pot, whenever one of them starts to climb up the side, The other ones will reach up and pull them down. And they will do it so much that they will actually pull limbs off of the crab that is trying to get out, even though they could have climbed over him and gotten out if they would have made a little crab ladder. But they don't. They will continue to pull down, just like you were saying, to come down to the level everyone wants to be in the same spot, bring down to the level. In this context, especially for entrepreneurs, if you're the only entrepreneur in your world, it's very, very hard because you're on one place with how you're thinking, what you're doing, all of this stuff, and everyone else is somewhere else. And they will continue to go, what you're doing doesn't make sense. You need to come back over here. So my strategy for this is to make sure to build a really solid support community of people who understand me, like me, know what I'm doing, are all about it, encourage me, and that I know that if I have one of those days where I feel like, fuck it, I'm just going to sink, I give, I yield, whatever, I can call and be like, hey, business bestie, I'm going to need a pick me up.
We are actually going to take just a really, really, really quick break, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to share with Camille my metaphor for what she just described. So stick around, come back, join us, listen to the rest of the episode, and we'll see you in just a minute. Pardon the interruption as we take a brief break before bringing you back to our episode. Are you an entrepreneur who feels like you're running a marathon on a hamster wheel each day, but you'd really rather be swimming with the pigs in the Bahamas or having breakfast with the giraffes in Africa? You're getting okay results in your business, but you're ready for exceptional results. It's time to hit the reset button to give your business a makeover and evolve into your next level of entrepreneurship. I want to invite you into the Reset, a 5-day business makeover to evolve your business from acceptable to exceptional. Visit breesealy.com/reset to get free access to this resource that will forever change the trajectory of your business. Welcome back. So Camille just described the crab pot metaphor, where if you're a crab at the bottom, you're pulling people down with you. If you're the crab at the top and there's a crab at the bottom, it's pulling you down. Then Camille mentioned that she has people around her that help lift her up, that help energize her. I launched a brand new mastermind last year. At this point, I've run it about twice and we'll be reopening applications again soon. So if anyone's listening, you want the info, let me know. I was looking for a metaphor because there's that butterfly metaphor, the cocoon, the chrysalis, all these things, right? And I was like, I'm so sick of that metaphor because 2 reasons. 1, everyone uses it. And 2, it relies on you being alone in the cocoon. None of us are doing this in isolation. We have people around us. And so I started looking for what are some transformation-based metaphors. I learned about a different type of crab, which is now my favorite type of crab, which is funny because my dad had a thing when I was growing up with hermit crabs in it. My mindset back then as a kid was when they outgrow their old one, puts a new shell in there and they get in it. So you think like, oh, they get in bigger shells. Hermit crabs in the wild can't do that because if they just try to get in a shell by themselves, 1, they're either going to be eaten by a predator, or 2, they're going to be baked in the sun. So it just takes a lot of time to get out of one shell and into the other. So what happens is a group of hermit crabs actually get together and they line themselves up because they're genius. They don't have words. They line themselves up from biggest to smallest, and then they get one bigger shell. Literally, the biggest one gets into the next biggest shell, and then the one behind it gets into its former shell, and the one behind it gets into its former shell. And it's this domino effect where they all just boom, 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 switch shells. What a beautiful metaphor for what this process is actually like. And so I use this metaphor now with my mastermind clients because we're all here helping each other get into our bigger shells, myself included in that process. It's just such a beautiful metaphor. If you feel like you're in a crab pot, what are you going to do to get out of that crab pot so that you stop being dragged down and find your community of hermit crabs?
I love this. I knew the hermit crabs did that. I'd never thought of it as the metaphor before.
I changed it to the screen on the back of my laptop. I just love it so much and it makes so much sense. None of us can do this entrepreneurial journey alone. Even when you were eating Cheetos out of your hoodie, you had people calling you being like, hey, so sorry, and they were like giving you these slivers, these beacons of light to help pull you out, even if they didn't know that's what they were doing. Now you're doing it more consciously by having a larger community around you that you can purposefully call on to help you get into that bigger shell again.
Right. By the way, that guy that I was snotty to, I texted him later and I was like, hey, I'm sorry. I had a little reaction today and that was inappropriate and please forgive me. And he was like, we're cool. So you can go back and fix it if you have one of those things happen. It's not over. And I think that's another piece of this whole failing and fear and all that. We think one time and it's over, like it's done. Oh my gosh, I've ruined it. No, you really didn't. It's fine.
I think this is where a lot of the humanity needs to come back into business. For so long, we've been told business isn't personal. Business is inherently personal. If you're not giving yourself the compassion, if you're not giving other people the compassion, if the people around you aren't giving you compassion, that is a recipe for failure, and not failure in the good way we're talking about. That's recipe for you getting into a deep, dark hole and not being able to come out. How do you feel like you find, other than obviously great introductions to great people, how do you find these hermit crabs around you?
Where are my crabs? How do I go get them? You hit the nail on the head. Most of it is introductions. I feel like a lot of it is luck, but also it's not really luck because I was looking. So I'll tell you a story about something that happened to us a few years ago. We wanted to get a car for our oldest daughter. And we had no idea what to get. And we're shopping at various places. And we're at one dealership, but we end up looking in their used car section. We find a Jeep. And it turns out to be a perfect fit. And so we buy it and we bring it home. Somehow, between when we left the car dealership with the new Jeep and the very next day, at least 100 more people in my town had purchased a Jeep. I don't know how that happened because I was suddenly seeing all these Jeeps on the road. Now, did everybody really go out and buy one the same day I did? No, they really didn't. But I had never perceived a white Jeep Cherokee until we went and bought one that day. And then all of a sudden, the next day, I'm driving around and I see them all. As far as building that community of hermit crabs, of people that will help you level up and move you to the next bigger shell, it's looking for them intentionally, even just putting it out there. Hey, I'm ready to level up. Just like I did when I decided to be a coach. Literally the night before I said, I think I'm going to be a coach. And the very next day, someone walked up to me and said, hey, do you do coaching? And I wasn't prepared at all. I didn't know what to charge. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a contract, but I said yes and figured it out. It's just attuning yourself to, this is what I think I want. Now I'm going to watch for it. And when you cue your brain to watch for a particular thing, it'll find it. The stuff is out there. Nothing is missing. It's really easy to think that when you get into that crab pot mentality, everybody's pulling you down. You think stuff is missing. You think it's not there. It's not available to you. It's not a possibility. When you go, you know what it is, all of a sudden it's there. Just like when we got a Jeep, now I'm thinking about Jeeps. Now they're everywhere. They didn't just appear overnight. They were always there. I just wasn't paying attention to them until I had one and thought about it. If you're wanting that community, those people, you're like, okay, ask really great questions. How am I going to find a person that will help me level up? Who is in my world that can introduce me to a person that will help me level up? What qualities does a level up person have? Where would they hang out? If you ask your brain questions, it will answer. It will find the answer. So you got to be careful and ask really great questions. Because if you ask questions like, why do I suck? Why am I failing? Why is everything going wrong? Guess what questions it's answering? Those ones. And then guess what happens? That stuff. Ask really great questions like, hey, what would make me more successful? What could I do today to move forward? How can I find the person that's going to help me get to the next level? And then it'll go find those answers. Those are the answers you want to find. Make sure to ask those questions.
Even that simple shift from I don't have the right people in my life to I wonder how I could meet the first right person in my life. If anyone's looking for a great entrepreneurial community to join, I do have a free one. You can go to breesealy.com/community. There's, I think now 1,100 of us in there by the time this airs, possibly even more than that. Come hang out with us and join us. It's a really, really great space to be. Last but not least, any other things that you feel like maybe we didn't touch on today? Maybe one last little nugget for the listeners.
Here's one that I like to share a lot because I feel like we miss it or we get shy about it or whatever it is. Go ask questions. That's one thing I feel like people get scared to do is just open their mouth. They're like, I'm going to sit in the back and see if somebody else says something that will teach me something. Nah, sit in the front of the class and ask a question. Who cares if your question is basic or it doesn't make sense or you're at a different level, whatever. Just keep pursuing that and ask the questions until you figure it out. One of the shifts on questions that I like to do that's along the lines of what we just talked about is a lot of times we ask the question, how come? How come this happened? How come that didn't work? How come? Because we want to know why. It's like we're 3 years old again. Why? So we keep asking that question, how come? Shift one word and ask, how can? How can I? Whatever it is. How can this work? How can we be more effective? If you change just that one word, you're no longer examining the things that went wrong and reliving all of the mess. You're just moving forward into what the next solution is going to be.
I love that. One little phrase that I've started adding in front of that question is, I wonder how.
Curiosity. Yes. Super powerful.
I know a lot of my clients, and they're very similar to me. If we're like, how can I blah, blah, blah? And our brain is immediately like, I don't know. And then we're like, well, if we don't know, then we can't do it. So I have a lot of big questions. Like, I wonder where my next tipping point is going to happen, or I wonder how this, or I wonder how that. And I don't have the answers right now. If I had the answers, I wouldn't be asking the question. I pose it a little more open. I wonder how. And it just adds this extra layer of curiosity or openness. And then it also, to me, says, all right, universe, I'm also ready for you to show me, because I'm super curious about how this could happen. So come on in.
Knowing how your own brain works and knowing how you think, so you can pick the words that resonate the most for you and choose those and intentionally use them to create that vibe that you want to create of curiosity and interest and being ready and all of those things. And play with it. You'll know when you hit the right thing. You will totally know, because you're like, oh, dang, all the information just downloaded and I didn't know where that came from. It'll show up. It's really cool.
I love that. Tell everyone where they can find you, how they can connect with you.
Happy to. Thank you. I am at CamilleDiaz.com. That's my website. You can get to all my coaching and everything else from there, podcasts, all the things that I do. My podcast is The Real Deal with Camille. So lots of true stories of life as an entrepreneur on there. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get Brie on the show too. So that should be fabulous. I would love that. If you want something from me, I've got a little Calm the Chaos in 15 Days. It's a short mini course video series, CamilleDiaz.com/15. And on social media, I'm at Cam Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for being such a lovely guest today. I would encourage everyone to make sure you go follow Camille on all the platforms, grab her free resource. I'm tempted to go grab her free resource as well. Go check it all out. Make sure that you also shoot her a DM and tell her that you saw her on the Entrepreneur Coach podcast. I just want to say thank you so much. It has been such a blessing getting to know you. I know this is just the beginning. I feel like you and I have so much more to create.
We do. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Such a wonderful, deep discussion in just such a short time. It's fabulous.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Entrepreneur Coach podcast. I hope you gained valuable wisdom from this episode and have at least one thing you can act on today. As I always say, listening to this episode will not change your life. What you do afterwards will. Please be sure to leave a rating and a review of the show, and don't forget to share this episode with a friend or colleague who could use it. Last but not least, please have the audacity to believe in the inevitability of your success today. You deserve it.